Hey guys, it's Layla from Ignite, and in today's video I'm going to be taking you through an approach in terms of answering a human experience essay question using the example of 1984. Now, the basis of this particular video is showing you how you can go into an exam with three broad ideas for your body paragraphs, how you use those to inform your thesis statement, but then how you also craft your topic sentences. So the focus here is thesis statements and topic sentences. Now, the question I have used in a previous video, and it's the same thesis that I also used in that video, but now what I'm doing is I'm building on that thesis and now showing you how you could actually prepare points and how you would use your topic sentences to continue on from what is framed in that thesis. So this video would be nicely kind of studied in tandem with my other human experience video using the same question. Okay, now as a starting point, I just wanted to frame the importance of thesis statements and topic sentences. Johnny and I have actually spoken to a few HSC markers, and they've said that when they're looking at papers, they read the introduction from the student and the topic sentences, and immediately they can sort of gauge what kind of band the student is sitting in. And that's because the introduction must establish your direct engagement with the question, particularly in your thesis statement, and the topic sentence needs to justify how the particular ideas of your body paragraphs are going to substantiate a sufficient answering of that question. So this video is really important if you're a student who doesn't really know how to adapt their points to the question in the exam. How do you kind of start off your body paragraph? How do you really ensure that your thesis statement links to your body paragraphs? All of these points are really key to ensuring you do well in your essays, and hopefully you'll find them useful in this video. So if you are studying 1984, here's a suggested focus for your body paragraphs. Now, this isn't exclusive, and what I mean by that is that you can of course have other points on which to base your body paragraphs. I'm merely using this to illustrate how you can adapt to the question. Okay, so a nice point I think to start off in 1984 in your first paragraph is framing the human experience of control. So what is it about Orwell's world and his text that is tainted by the control of power authorities, and how does that limit the agency and the autonomy of the individual? And moving on from those modes of control, one can then consider how does the individual seek to rebel against such regimes of power. And in the text, intimacy is quite an interesting way of exploring that. The relationship between Winston and Julia does enable him to kind of break away from elements of control, because the sexual drive and human instinct cannot be tamed. Well, at least it is thought that it cannot be tamed by regimes of power. So leading on from control, you can look at the potential for rebellion via intimacy, but then ultimately at the end of the text, we have submission. We find out that the power of Big Brother cannot be undone by any form of rebellion, and thus Winston admits by the end, I love Big Brother, and not that he loves his lover throughout the text. Okay, and also note, even if you're not using this particular structure in your essay, that there's a nice kind of logical progression through these paragraphs. It wouldn't make sense, for example, to start off with ultimate submission at the end of your response, right? You want to think about, okay, how is control framed? How does this dictate human experience? How is that potentially challenged in the text? And what's the result of that by the end? So that's a nice kind of progression to work with. So you go into the exam, you've got 3 prepared points. You've got, I would say, at least 3 quotes per paragraph. You've got your analysis prepared. You've got your points on context and form. Okay, now how do we actually adapt this and frame it in response to a question? That's what I'm going to go through in the next few slides. So here's an example question. Like I mentioned, I've used it in previous videos, and I'm treating this as a continuation from the thesis I've framed in the other videos. So the question reads, through the telling and receiving of stories, we become more aware of ourselves and our shared human experiences. Explore this statement with close reference to your prescribed text. Okay, so it's quite a broad question. Unlike a question that gives you a specific thematic value, or if it focalizes a particular aspect of form in the text, we don't have that here. So this is typically an easier kind of question to work with. So in response to this question, here's an example thesis statement. So we've unpacked telling and receiving through considering how is the story told, how is it received. We've looked at we become more aware of in terms of what we actually become more aware of through engaging with the text and how Orwell engages us with these ideas. And finally, why these are shared human experiences. Why is it that Orwell's representation compels us to connect with this text in an enduring way? So here's an example of a thesis in response to that question, but the focus in the next slides is how do we adapt those key ideas that we've prepared in advance of the exam, and how do we then develop topic sentences in relation to that. So, Orwell's telling of human experience against the backdrop of totalitarianism in the post-war period is not contextually bound. 1984 captures the fundamental shared human desires for agency and human connection. So we framed already, why does he tell the text in the way he does? Well, because of the contextual backdrop. That contextual backdrop leads him to convey fundamental shared human desire for agency and human connection. So through defining the question in that way, in light of the points based on control, desire for rebellion or intimacy as a means through which one can rebel, and then ultimate submission, through framing it in this way, we're implicitly foregrounding why the body paragraphs will attempt to answer this kind of question. So there's an element of foresight in how this has been framed. Receiving Orwell's retelling of his time allows an interpersonal reflection of how one's independence and paradoxical desire for connection defines our experience of our world. So this next sentence is justifying, well, what does Orwell actually make us more aware of? And this last point down here about desire for connection is implicitly connecting to the second body paragraph on intimacy. So do you see how we use the explicit words in the question, you unpack them in a way that has foresight in terms of the direction of your response, and that is so fundamental because when we get to those body paragraphs, when the marker reads those topic sentences, they're convinced that these particular points are sufficient in answering the question. Okay, so in terms of thinking about the key ideas, how have they been framed more explicitly here? We can look over here, we've got fundamental shared human desires for agency. Well, that's contradicted by elements of control. So that body paragraph is justified in light of that part of the question. A desire, the paradoxical desire for connection, that links to the intimacy paragraph. And ultimately, the fact that we reflect on how one's independence is overlooked in the text, that links to the final paragraph of submission. So you want to make sure in the way that you're framing your thesis, you're implicitly justifying the direction of the essay. Of course, at the end of the introduction, you should also signpost your points. I usually tell my students at the very end, you should have a final sentence which reads something along the lines of, in order to consider how Orwell's telling of his story enables the recognition of shared human experience, one can consider, and then you can list your key points. So paraphrase the wording of the question and then state your 3 key ideas at the end of the introduction so that you've got, your implicit framing in the thesis, you explicitly signpost at the end of the paragraph, and then that nicely gives the marker some direction for the rest of your essay. That's just an additional piece of advice. Okay, so now let's take a look at the topic sentences. So we know the first body paragraph is going to be based on control. So let's look at how now we've construed a topic sentence on control in light of the question. Now this is important because I've actually looked at a lot of feedback on my students' trial responses, and a lot of them actually start off with a really good thesis. They always get the comment, strong intro, lots of ticks in there. But then as the essay continues, they forget to actually continue to engage with the question. So the topic sentence, I would argue, is of equal importance, if not even more than the thesis statement, because it shows the marker that as they continue to read your response, there is that continued engagement. So topic sentence 1 based on control. You've gone into the exam with this broad idea. Now we're justifying how this broad idea answers the question. Orwell's dystopic telling of omnipresent control provokes an awareness of the extent to which our shared human experiences can be scripted by the disciplinary regimes of those in power. So we've said here, the fact that he tells it in this dystopic lens, that's linking back to the telling here, he provokes a reception, right, of an awareness that the extent to which our shared human experiences can be scripted by such control. So do you see how we've continued to use these keywords to frame the key idea to show that we're continuing to engage with the question? Okay, so that's body paragraph number 1. Body paragraph number 2, which is focusing on innate desire and intimacy. Okay, so Orwell presents our shared and innate desire for emotional and physical connection as fundamental to our agency, thereby encouraging an awareness of our desire to connect as a powerful force of rebellion. Okay, so he tells it through the representation as shared and as innate in terms of this human desire. And through this vehicle, we become more aware of our desire to connect as a powerful force of rebellion. So again, we're not just restating the words in the question, we're actually using them to facilitate the way that you explain the key point for that paragraph. And that's really important. You're not just kind of superficially planting the words of the question into your response. You're actually using them to express your ideas in a way that legitimately engages with the question. And finally, the ultimate paragraph based on submission. So in light of control, the desire to rebel, the final paragraph here, ultimately it is the confronting nature of Winston's pitiful submission. So this confronting nature of pitiful submission, that's explaining how it's told implicitly. Submission to power in the novel's end, which forces our awareness of the penetrative form of manipulative governance and the need for shared human rebellion in such a context. So again, how is it told? How does this dictate our reception of the text? Well, it provokes us to become more aware of this particular idea. And it also conveys that these elements of control compel a shared rebellion in order to overcome such regimes of power in light of Orwell's text. Okay guys, so just taking that a little bit further, what I want you to keep in mind, okay, prepping for an exam, of course, have some pre-prepared points, have your quotes there, have your analysis, but it's absolutely crucial as you go into the exam, you use those words in the question to not only frame your argument, but also in the way that you express your topic sentences throughout your response, because the best essay doesn't just engage with the question in the introduction, but has a consistent engagement. And in order to do that, the thesis statement must have foresight. You must actually implicitly frame your body paragraphs in the way you frame the thesis. But further than that, you also need to make sure you're consistently engaging throughout the rest of the essay. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Please do comment if you have any questions, like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you do like the content, subscribe to our channel and we'll have more videos coming your way.
That's right guys, thanks for watching, and please make sure you check out our online resource database. We've had a team of state rank achievers and heads of English put these together for you, covering everything from essay structures and examples all the way through to craft of writing and comprehension skills. So check them out at ignitehse.com.au, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.